Chapter 17.
You're disappointed you don't have anything to do, aren't you?
We were sitting in one of the crew recreational lounges, finally wearing clean clothes. Confederation styles, but the almost chino pants and long-sleeved almost t-shirts might have not looked too far out of place in a big Earth city. I'd transferred my dye and powder to my new pockets. I was also still holding on to Volonic stun grenade, which I now thought of as good luck, though it might just as easily have been bad luck. I decided to go for the optimistic interpretation. After all, we were enjoying an extended period of time in which no one was trying to experiment on us, lock us up, or generally make us dead. That was just the beginning of the good news, though. We were all together, and we were all safe. Sure, a bunch of fads could try and attack us, but from what I'd seen of this ship, we didn't have much to worry about. Captain Quassel had stopped 4 Fadic cruisers in their tracks. Nothing short of an armada could take us on. Our enemies, I could suppose, be putting together an armada at this very moment, but right now, there were no signs of that. It would have taken an effort to remember the last time my life had been this stress-free. I sat with a glass of alien soda in my hand, talking with my friends. I was even happy to be talking to Niana. Maybe especially happy. I didn't care if she was criticizing me. What was a little teasing when compared to safety, cleanliness, and alien soda?
Admit it, Zeke, she said. You've reached the point where you cannot imagine a major event unfolding on the galactic stage, unless you've had a hand in it.
Niana still looked a little frail to me, but already less drawn than when I'd seen her over the view screen. Back when we'd first met, she'd had the radiant self-assurance of a Bollywood star, and while her appearance hadn't changed much, she seemed somehow less confident, less certain that the world would automatically bend to her whim. That didn't stop her from giving me a hard time, though.
He did have a hand in just about everything, Tamrat said. You missed a lot after you got yourself captured. Yes, I heard about all that silliness, she said, dismissing our last stay on Confederation Central, and the hunt for the hidden fortress with a wave of her hand. And that is part of what I mean. I'm not being critical, you understand. I don't deny that you've participated in certain aspects of recent galactic events. That is why I think being put on the sidelines must be challenging for you.
If I had to be completely honest, I'd admit she wasn't entirely wrong. After everything we'd been through, having a bunch of adults show up and simply announce things were now under control was a little disappointing, like someone had gone back on a promise. I didn't feel left out so much as I felt like the rules had suddenly changed without warning. I had thought there would be no choice but to risk death yet again by rolling the 20-sided die and going down to some supermax Fadic prison to rescue, among other people, the one being who could bring the Fadic Empress to her knees. I wasn't disappointed that I'd been spared going and having to do that mission. I was relieved. And that relief made me feel guilty, like I was trying to get out of something that was my responsibility. Fortunately, no one said I had to be completely honest, so I felt free to admit nothing. Besides, I knew the situation was in good hands. These weren't just any adults who were now in charge. It was Dr. Roop and Captain Quassel, with Urch backing them up. Plus, there was Director Glee-Wipsix, who had once crossed the galaxy to ask for my help, and whom I had crossed the galaxy to rescue. The fact that I hadn't needed to rescue her, or do anything else, was okay by me. Kids doing nothing while adults took care of a crisis. That was the way it was supposed to be. I couldn't shake the feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop, though. I told myself that there would be no other shoe. There were no more shoes left. The shoe supply was depleted and the galaxy was unshod. I just wished I could have really believed it. There was also the fact that I wanted one more chance to show Tamrat what I could do. If I were busy hulking my way through an enemy prison, rescuing our friends and prisoners of cosmic significance, I wouldn't have to think about how she'd chosen her world over staying with me.
I'm with Zeke on this one, Steve said.
He was drinking a glass of water with dozens of little fish swimming in it. He took a sip, chewed for a bit, and then set the glass down.
I want to be doing something. This sitting around on our bottoms is for tossers.
I never said that, I told him.
You didn't have to, mate. I understand.
Count me in, Tamrat said. Alice, who had been sitting with her legs folded under her, now stretched and looked excited.
Awesome. The sooner we get everything on track, the sooner we can all go home. What's the plan?
There is no plan, I told them. We're with the good guys, and they're doing good guy things. All they have to do is get to Confederation Central and tell everyone Glee-Wixix is alive and Junip destroyed the kind disposition while trying to kill her. No fighting or breaking in or out of places. We can trust them to handle this.
You sure about that, mate?
Steve asked.
They haven't been so keen on talking to us since we came aboard, have they?
There's plenty we don't know, Tamrat agreed. Why didn't Captain Quassel meet us where she was supposed to? Why did she decide to rescue the prisoners herself? These were good questions, but so far there had been no answers. We had been welcomed aboard and given the run of the ship, but when I told Captain Quassel and Director Glee-Wixix I wanted to let them know everything we had experienced, they had dismissed me. Like, they hadn't been unkind, but they had seemed like they were busy and distracted. And after all I'd done, I didn't like being treated as though I were an annoying kid trying to pretend he belonged with the grown-ups. Still, I knew they had things to do, and while the information I had was useful, it wasn't vital to the next phase of the mission. The fact that a bunch of rebel fads wanted to destroy Confederation Central in order to get rid of Junip wouldn't matter if we got rid of Junip first. It was only going to become important if we couldn't expose Junip, and if that happened, there would be a lot of other bad things going on.
I am rather surprised that they do not wish to hear our after-action report,
Charles said.
And so, to show our displeasure, you think we should mutiny against Captain Quassel?
Niana asked.
Do I understand you correctly?
If necessary,
Steve nodded thoughtfully.
I'd love to see how something this big handles. And Zeke here wants to go with the weapons.
I sighed. I knew that they were kidding. Mostly. We're just going to have to live with being civilians, at least for a little while, I said. They all knew what I meant. When this was over, and we returned to our homes, nothing would be the same. Everyone would now know about alien life, but almost everyone on Earth who had real experience with galactic culture was sitting in the lounge on board this ship. The chances were good that we were all going to be asked to play our part as our worlds adjust to being part of the wider galactic culture. Just then, our data bracelets pinged us. Captain Quassel and Director Glee-Wixix wanted us in a briefing in half an hour. Looks like we're back in the inner circle, I said.
I'll table the plan for taking over the ship,
Steve said.
For now.
Before I could respond, a second message came through on my bracelet. Dr. Roop wanted to talk to me privately before that meeting. He asked me to meet him immediately in the conference room. He didn't say to keep it a secret, so I told the others where I was going.
I'll go with you,
Tamrat said.
We'll all go,
Steve said. Then it isn't really a private meeting, I told them, trying to avoid looking guilty. I knew what Dr. Roop wanted. He wanted to know about my former abilities and the die. He was too smart to have not figured out that something was up, and I was surprised he hadn't asked me before. Maybe he'd been getting questioned from Captain Quassel and the others, and now he wanted to know if he needed to cover for me. I'll let you guys know if he has anything interesting to say.
You sure?
Steve asked guardedly. We're talking about Dr. Roop, I said. Steve didn't respond. Did being benched make him suspicious of even Dr. Roop? That he was up to no good? He was the one adult that I was always going to trust, and the truth was, I was happy to be able to tell him about the powder and the dye. Maybe he could use the information as a starting point to figure out how to get our abilities back.
He'll be fine, Tamrat said. I'll be there to protect him.
What about it being a private meeting?
Alice asked.
I'm sure he didn't mean to exclude me, she said.
Niana rolled her eyes.
Dr. Roop is just being practical. He knows he can convince us to see reason, but Tamrat is going to do what she wants no matter what anyone says. And don't you forget it,
she said with a smile. I don't have any secrets, I lied, but I think it's probably better to do what Dr. Roop says. If there's anything important, I'll let you guys know. Without waiting for a response, I left the room. I didn't dare turn turn around to see Tamrat's expression. I used my bracelet to guide me through the ship, which was enough like other Confederation ships I'd been on to seem familiar, but different enough that I would get lost if I weren't paying close attention. When I reached the conference room, Dr. Roop was already seated, but he rose to greet me. He then closed the door, locked it, and activated a keyboard from his data bracelet. After about 30 seconds of typing, an electrical blue charge seemed to coat the walls. The effect lasted less than a second, and then it was gone. I didn't know for sure, but my guess was that Dr. Roop had deployed some sort of anti-surveillance technology. "Who is it you don't trust?" I asked.
"Everyone,"
he said, his giraffe-like face looking very serious.
"I know I can count on you children, and Captain Quassel has proven her loyalty beyond question. But otherwise, I'm not inclined to be trusting. We are discussing the most dangerous and violent technology in the known galaxy."
"And why do you want to discuss that with me?" I asked, trying to sound like I had no idea and probably coming across as guilty.
"Zeke, only you were able to reactivate your former abilities," he said. "I'd like you to brief me on what I don't know, so I can decide how best to protect you and possibly all life within the galaxy."
"Why do you need to know suddenly?"
"If we had been poised to try and rescue the prisoners ourselves, you may feel quite confident I would have asked you during the pre-mission briefing. Now there are larger, more political issues that I must contend with. I need to know precisely what happened."
His point was beyond doubt valid. Getting rid of Junip and shutting down the Empress's ability to expand were great things, but if they only meant a brief delay, while the Fads perfected the former military technology, we'd have gained nothing. I walked Dr. Roop through the major events following Valonic's jettison of the escape pod. I had already told him about the Renegade Fads and their plan to destroy Confederation Central, but now I told them how they planned to do it. I was in the middle of describing one of the briefings when he stopped me.
"This convex icosahedron, who is he?"
"He seemed to be their leader, but I don't know anything about his species. He was weird, though. I don't mean personality, though that is definitely true. I mean, I couldn't tell if he was alive or artificial. His head was a big geometric shape, with no face. I avoided likening him to a 20-sided die because I was hoping to avoid the subject for as long as possible."
"He was one of the geometric upstarts,"
Dr. Roop said, as if talking to himself. This surprised me. "You've heard of them? What can you tell me about them?"
They're not something that you need to concern yourself with,"
he assured me.
"Please, continue."
And I might have done so, without giving the matter another thought, if I hadn't felt a gentle buzz. Convex icosahedron's lie detector had kicked in. Besides my parents, Dr. Roop was the adult I trusted most in the galaxy, and he had just lied to me. I was grown up enough to know it didn't need to be a big deal. After all, I had withheld information from Dr. Roop about the 20-sided die, and that didn't make me evil, I hoped. Still, I was supposed to be able to trust him. I understood that maybe there were things he thought I shouldn't know about, but I wasn't some innocent bystander. I was pretty deeply involved in everything. I didn't like being boxed out. "I kind of feel like you're holding something back," I said. Dr. Roop rubbed his horns, as he did when he was anxious.
"I don't know that we need to get into this, Zeke. It's not pressing, and honestly, it's not my story to tell. Ask your father when this is all over."
No buzz from the lasso of truth, but now that seemed to be besides the point. "My father? What does he have to do with any of this?"
"I'll give you the short version," he said, "but that's it, because he needs to decide how much of this story to share. In return, you'll tell me everything you are holding back."
I nodded. "Deal."
"You know that you were led to believe your father died in a vehicle accident, but of course you later learned that in reality he left Earth. Have you never wondered how he came to be on Confederation Central, and how once there he managed to rise to a position of such prominence?"
My father had promised to tell me at some point, but since we'd been reunited, our conversations had tended to be brief and of the "I'm glad you're out of prison" and "don't get killed doing what you're about to do" variety. The heart-to-heart hadn't happened yet. "What do you know about it?" I asked.
The car accident was real, Dr. Rube said. Your father was critically injured, and for reasons we don't understand, he was rescued by one of the geometric upstarts, who happened to be on Earth at the time. I do not know why, but he was there, and he took an interest in your father. The geometric upstart duplicated your father's genetic material, so it would appear he died in the accident. He then took your father to Confederation Central. There, the geometric upstart provided him with a new appearance and identity, and put him on course to advance in the world of politics.
But why? Who was he? Why would he pick my father, of all people on Earth, to take to the Confederation?
I don't know,
Dr. Rube said.
I never got the full story. I'm not sure your father knows either, but I always believed he knew more than he told me.
But you have to have a guess about what it all means.
I have some unproven theories,
Dr. Rube said.
Nothing more. Now, tell me about this former tech.
I sighed. It was less information than I wanted, but Dr. Roop was right, and it wasn't vital to the current crisis. Besides, my lie detector hadn't piped up, so I figured whatever else he knew, he would tell me after things settled down. I went back to my story and told him about the scientist on Planet Pleasant, the powder, and the dye.
So, you risked your life to fight Ardov?
It was either risk my life or be certain of getting killed, I said. It seemed like a reasonable decision at the time.
I understand,
Dr. Roop said.
Do you still have this dye?
I reached into my pocket and handed it to him. He turned it over and looked at it from different angles.
Do you know what this shape is called?
I nodded. It's a convex icosahedron.
Interesting, isn't it?
What are you saying? I asked. That this geometric upstart sent me to Planet Pleasant just so I would find an object that had its name? That makes no sense.
There is a lot here that makes no sense,
Dr. Roop said. He handed the die back to me.
When Junip is out of power and the fads are once more contained, I hope you will let me run some tests on that dye and the powder.
Sure, I said. Maybe you could figure out how to reactivate the former tech.
Possibly,
he said.
But right now I don't think that's a good idea. There is a reason, I suspect, that the tech tree was lost for so many millennia. It is too dangerous, and hacking it creates beings of almost unimaginable power. I'm glad the technology is unstable, and I hope no one figures out how to repair it. In the meantime, the information about the powder and the dye must be kept secret.
Are you worried about something?
I am worried about almost everything,
he said.
And I worry all the time. However, I don't see any reason we need to worry about any of this until after we return Gleewick-6 to her rightful place. Once we have restored the government of the Confederation, we can depend upon the best minds finding answers to all these questions.